By the end of this video, you will learn just how shocking yet magnificent was the battle to defend Hong Kong's financial sector during the Asian financial crisis in 1998. This is the story of the battle of wits between the Hong Kong government and Soros and his gang of capital predators. Just one day after Hong Kong's return to China, Thailand failed to defend its Thai baht after a 4-month battle. The Asian financial crisis officially kicked off when the Thai government was forced to depeg Thai baht against the US dollars. In the following months, the markets in other Southeast Asian countries fell one by one, like dominoes. The Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia's financial markets all collapsed, while Soros had gained more than $10 billion in wealth. With his success in the Southeast Asian markets, Soros moved to Hong Kong and launched his first attack in October 1997. Because Hong Kong is Asia's financial center, it is destined to become a decisive battleground. To secure his victory, Soros carefully planned his strategy a year in advance. Back in 1996, a year before the outbreak of the Asian financial crisis, Soros and his fund groups officially entered the Hong Kong market and planted 4 seeds. First, they secured a large amount of Hong Kong dollars in the foreign exchange market. Next, they collectively bought large volume of constituent stocks of the Hang Seng Index in the stock market, which quickly boosted the index itself. Third, they shorted stock index and foreign exchange futures in advance. On one hand, Soros has buffed the stock and property market, and on the other, he had hoarded chips for smashing the market at his will. Soros's first step was to pretend an attack on the foreign exchange market by selling the Hong Kong dollars he has hoarded. When the exchange rate is stressed and capital starts to outflow, Hong Kong monetary authorities' first reaction must be raising interest rates. By raising interest rates, the balance between Hong Kong dollar and US dollar can be restored, thus stopping the capital outflows. But we all know that interest rate hikes have a very serious side effect. They will weigh on the stock market. The bubbled stock market will burst, just like the Japanese economic bubble. Soros' second step was to leverage the interest rate hike, targeting constituent stocks of the Hang Seng Index, suppressing the index while creating panic. Since 1996, Soros and the predators had been absorbing chips at low prices in the market, and by now, the constituent stocks in their hands have already risen a lot. It is difficult for the stock market not to collapse once they started to let go of their inventories. Once the stock market plummets, Soros' third step comes into play. Soros has previously prepared a huge number of futures in the stock market, and because the leverage of futures were generally very high, his profit would be easily magnified. If all 3 steps are successful, Soros will make insane profit. All he has to do is to repeat this strategy until Hong Kong is drained. As the cycle repeats, the market would start to panic. Here comes Soros' final objective, to cause a collapse of the Hong Kong dollar and depeg it against the US dollar. Once that happens, there would be a massive capital outflow and an accelerated depreciation of the Hong Kong dollar, which Soros had already positioned himself for massive profit in the exchange and future markets should this happen. From October 21st to 23rd, 1997, Soros launched the first round of attacks. Financial predators sold more than 40 billion Hong Kong dollars in the foreign exchange market for 3 consecutive trading days. Facing the attacks, Joseph Yam, chief executive of the HKMA, chose to respond by raising interest rates as expected, and used its US dollar reserves to absorb the Hong Kong dollars being sold. As expected, the stock market immediately fell under pressure, and this was exactly what Soros wanted. As the stock market reacted to the interest rate, Soros shifted from the foreign exchange market to the stock market and started to sell his inventories. The Hang Seng Index plummeted from 15,120 to 9,040 points, a drop of 40% in a month. Soros was victorious in the first battle. He and the predators made billions of dollars with the stock index futures. Fast forward to January and June 1998, Soros used the same tactics to hollow out 30 billion and 7.28 billion in the foreign exchange market. By that time, the HKMA was already in complete chaos and was defenseless. Western media even mocked that Hong Kong had become Soros's ATM. August 1998, because of his previous success, Soros decided that the time was ripe for launching his final harvesting offensive. On August 5, 1998, he launched a fierce attack on the foreign exchange and stock market, which caused a massive sell-off in both. As he expected, the Hang Seng Index started to plummet. August 13, 1998, was the darkest moment in Hong Kong's financial history. Compared to the previous year, Hang Seng Index has shrunk by 63%, and housing prices have also fallen by more than 50%. Under the repeated siege, Hong Kong seemed to be done. If the Hong Kong government does not take action, the Hang Seng Index will soon plummet to 4,000 points and lead to the collapse of its financial sector. There were only three paths in front of its government. The first path is to implement capital controls. The second is to depeg its dollar. And the third final path is market intervention. Hong Kong is known as a free port, and if the first path of implementing capital controls was taken, it would lose its reputation as a free port. The Basic Law also clearly stipulates that the implementation of any capital controls on the free convertibility of the Hong Kong dollar is against the Basic Law. What about the second path to depeg its dollars against the US dollars? Well, this path is essentially giving up. As soon as the government gave up the peg of its dollar, its depreciation would be inevitable. Its stock and property market would plummet, and Hong Kong would be the next Thailand. However, one advantage of this path is that the 95 billion of US foreign exchange reserves could be preserved. In fact, this reserve was what Soros wanted to harvest the most. Then there is the third final path, that is, to use the foreign exchange reserves to enter the market and fight back. Facing a desperate situation, the pressure on the Finance Secretary Donald Tsang and Joseph Yam was immense. They both knew that they could not surrender without a fight. The two quickly came to a consensus and made a decision that will go down in history. They had decided to use the foreign exchange reserves to defend the markets. They quickly reported the idea of intervening the market to Tung Chee-hwa, the chief executive at the time, and he decisively agreed to their plan. In fact, an important reason why the Hong Kong government dared to put up a fight was that the senior financial officials of the government had already secretly communicated with Beijing and had been promised to provide reserves to help the fight whenever Hong Kong needed it. August 14, 1998, Hong Kong fought back. The government gave up its practice of blindly raising interest rates and began an all-out battle in the stock and foreign exchange market. On one hand, the government caught the Hong Kong dollar being sold in the foreign exchange market. On the other hand, it used its foreign and land reserves to acquire the 33 constituent stocks of the Hang Seng Index. Also, Chinese and Hong Kong enterprises joined the battle. 24 blue-chip and red-chip listed companies repurchased their shares in the market at the same time, jointly raising their stock prices. On August 14, 1998, the Hang Seng Index recorded the biggest one-day increase in 6 years, regaining the 7,000-point mark. The Hong Kong government's counterattack surprised Soros and the predators. They knew very well that once the battle starts, the war will not end until one falls. Since the predators held a large amount of futures contracts, this means the result of this war will be decided 14 days later, that is, August 28th, when most of their contracts were due to mature. In the following days, the Hong Kong government and Soros engaged in series of close combats. The predators kept on bombarding the stock, foreign exchange, and futures market, while the government took over all the huge selling orders and the Hang Seng Index did not budge an inch. The decisive battle date was getting closer and closer. With only 4 days left before the expiration of the August contracts, the government moved to the futures market with a huge amount of ammunition after successfully stabilizing the stock market. Feeling the determination to fight till the end, some predators want to attrite the war by extending their future maturities to September. However, Hong Kong was determined to end the war in August once and for all. On August 24th, the government took the initiative in shorting 40,000 September contracts, thus plummeting the price of the contracts to 7,200, Because the average price of the August contracts were 7,500, the predators would have to suffer a loss of 300 points per contract by retreating. There was no turning back for Soros and the predators. If they were to win the war, they must suppress the market below 7,500 points. On August 27th, the global stock market plummeted and markets in the United States, Europe, and Asia fell sharply across the board. The 33 constituent stocks of the Hang Seng Index were heavily suppressed as soon as the market opened. Selling orders reached 1.9 billion in the first 15 minutes, and trading volume had remained high throughout the day. 15 minutes before the market closing, the turnover bid had already reached 8.2 billion Hong Kong dollars. The predators kept on attacking while the government spent more than 20 billion to catch whatever the predators sold. As of market closing on August 27th, the Hang Seng Index rose 88 points and closed at 7,922 points. Hong Kong became the spotlight of the global stock market on that day. On the next day, August 28th, the eyes of the world turned to Hong Kong. At 10 o'clock morning sharp, the decisive battle of the war began in the stock market. Besides from Soros and his gang of predators, many foreign banks also joined the battle by short selling at a massive scale. The government had to single-handedly defend the stock market by sucking in 600 million Hong Kong dollars of stocks every minute. Soon after the market opened, the trading volume soared to 10 billion. Millions of Hong Kong people stared at the flickering of the Hang Seng Index on their screens, knowing that the future of Hong Kong was at stake. No matter how much the predators sold, the government caught all of them, and the index hovered at 7,800 points. When the afternoon market opened, Soros and the predators were cornered and had to fight back. They knew this was their last chance to turn the outcome of the war. They managed to suppress the index by 300 points by frantically selling whatever inventories they have on their hands. The government quickly mobilized funds and stopped the suppression and recovered the index back to 7,800 points. On that day, the stock market turnover reached 79 billion and set a record for the highest turnover in the history of its stock market. When the market closed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the index closed at between 7,821 and 7,851 points. The war was over and Soros and the predators were defeated. Hong Kong was defended. In just 10 trading days, between August 14th till the closing on August 28th, the government deployed 120 billion in foreign exchange reserves to boost the Hang Seng Index by 1,169 points. By the end of 1998, Soros acknowledged his defeat and withdrew from Hong Kong.